Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our reaction and review for Shrinking Season 1, Episode 7, Apology Tour. This is the aftermath, really, of Imposter Syndrome, which is most chaotic and one of the best episodes of the entire season.
Easily
Yeah,
one of the best episodes of the season was this last episode, but this episode was the fallout from the best episode of the season. And I mean, it's I think a lot of what we kind of expected. There was one thing that came out of it that I didn't expect, which was Paul finding out that Gabby and Jimmy slept together and no reaction. I actually expected there to be a lot bigger of a reaction, that it could have hurt their business. Like I thought there was going to be like legitimate fallout from him.
Paul's an interesting dude. I think we can all make this very, very
Yep.
clear at this point. He's very serious about his job and helping his patients to the point of, he's obsessed over it. He hasn't spent as much time with Meg or his family or a lot of other things.
Ooh, that talk, man,
Yeah,
that was rough.
it was really, really rough. And yet, here, here are two people who are a part of, the same practice as him. They've hooked up. Could this cause big ramifications? Like, my sort of tinfoil hat if I'm looking inside Paul's head, which is kind of an interesting thought in itself. But I feel like his philosophy on things is just as long as it doesn't hurt the patients, it's fine. I don't know why he's southern in my voice, but I think he's really all about, you know what, you guys are consenting adults. You did this. You deal with the fallout of it. If it hurts the patients or if it hurts the practice or if you guys start to carry it into your work, then we're really going to have a problem. But I am like you. I thought there was going to be a lot more of a big reaction from it in the moment.
Absolutely. But before we jump into this, make sure you check out our Patreon. We have live streams every single Tuesday night, and we're talking about shrinking over there. Has been a lot of fun. And also hit that subscribe button, because besides shrinking, we're also covering Hijack, we're covering The Bear, The Morning Show. Season 3 is going to be coming up very soon, and we're like blowing through that here at the channel. There's a lot of great stuff coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we start by just noting how terrible of a liar Jimmy is and how Gabby is not much better? Like the immediate morning fallout, him just like, I'm here in the kitchen. Oh, Gabby's here. Gabby's in the kitchen. Gabby slept in the guest room. It's like nobody was asking where Gabby slept. You don't have to. I would know. I mean, they already recognized that something weird was going on. Didn't say what, but you guys could not fake this any better at all.
No. And I mean, I was glad that they did sort of have an initial talk about it right away, to kind of be like, okay, this happened. This is weird. This is why it happened. It is sort of that they're both dealing with grief. They were both, it's a safe place for both of them to be. They've been friends a really long time. They have a very deep connection over Tia and the loss of her, and sort of where this all came together, because Gabby had really been struggling being intimate with anybody. She was just unable to be there or get there. And then she was able to be there with Jimmy, because they do have a friendship. They do
Mhm.
have shared loss. Jimmy was having the same problem. Yeah, there was lots of women over at his house, but he was having problems with intimacy as well. Here's Gabby, someone who, is a longtime friend, a good friend, a colleague. It's a safe spot for both of them to be in. And it seemed like the main sort of issue here, where Gabby was like, "Oh, I don't have any regrets over this." And Jimmy's like, "Oh, I do." Later, he says he doesn't, but
Mhm.
they're both claiming to be at the same page, where they're just like, we're both not looking for something that's a deeper relationship. Jimmy is not ready to find his next love. Gabby just got divorced.
Yeah,
She's not ready to find her next true love. Could it be that it's them? Sure, of course, but they're just not there now.
it's a really tricky spot that they find themselves in because I think they both genuinely feel this. I mean, I think Jimmy doesn't regret it, but I think Jimmy felt the need, this impulse that he had to tell himself that he regretted it because he felt so guilty about it happening
Yeah.
in the first place. But him starting to come to terms with that part of it, I think is going to be a really interesting part of his evolution now, because what else are you going to come to terms with now that you've sort of recognized
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. And I think that both of them would have had different reactions if there were strong feelings involved. If they're coming together in love, I think that
Mhm.
that would have been the thing that they're both like, okay, now we feel guilty and now we have regret.
And they each have this interesting way of dealing with it, where Gabby has this conversation with Tia.
Mhm.
Jimmy decides at the end of this, okay, you know what, I'll try this too, maybe this will make me feel a little better. And then lo and behold, we get the big cliffhanger at the end of all
Of
this.
course.
This was all that we all knew this was going to be coming, where Alice was going to find out about it. I'm really happy that they just got this out of the way now and like didn't hold on to it, because it is such an obvious TV trope that it would be revealed right before the finale, and then the finale would be the fallout.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody's going to be okay with this situation, but I think the thing that's going to be the hardest is the way that it came out.
Yeah.
Jimmy he's dealing with so much. He's lost his wife. He's been numbing his pain for a year. Now everything is coming to the surface for him. He's a therapist, so the idea of his job is to talk things out. He doesn't have a very good relationship with his daughter at the moment because he closed off. He became emotionally unavailable to her. And we've seen that throughout this whole season, even when she was like, yeah, let's talk about it. And he sits down and he's like, okay, let's talk about it. And she's like, sarcasm? Like, no, we don't have that kind of relationship anymore. Like, it's changed. And it's tough because with all of that, he needed to just have the conversation with her so she didn't find out like this. This feels like a betrayal on top of a betrayal with no actual conversation about it.
I think the part that's probably the hardest is that Alice is gonna feel like she was lied to. I mean, she didn't explicitly ask, were you guys together or whatever, but they came on out, they put on this whole show, and I think she's
Mhm.
gonna be just as mad at Gabby as she is Jimmy, and that may not be fair, but it's sort of this situation where, because she's had these more personal conversations with Gabby lately, where she's really opened up to her, I
Mhm.
think it's really going to hurt that, okay, there's this big thing that you had involving my dad, and you didn't tell me while I was sort of pouring my heart out about everything that I was going through. And she's a teenager still. She's gonna be immature and reactive at times, and that's
Yeah.
understandable.
Okay, I'm putting on my hard hat
All
here
right.
because there's two things that this show have sort of taken it too far,
Okay.
where it's like this is supposed to be a very complicated show. There is some humor in a lot of these very dark subjects. Like, we are talking about grief and moving on, everything that's going on with Paul or whatever. So I feel that the show has made two really big missteps here, and one of them was in this episode.
Mhm.
One is having Jimmy doing heavy drugs throughout his grief and having his daughter have to actually clean that stuff up after him. It's such a dark, awful place for a minor to have to be in that it's made it a little more difficult for them to sort of come together in a way where it's a little more believable that she's doing as well as she is. That's some really dark stuff for her to have to go through, and a little bit too dark for the Jimmy character to be going through, where we're having a show that's like a comedy and laughs and jokes, and there is some lightheartedness, and he's doing that. It's a bit of a dark road. Then we have this conversation in this episode with Gabby and Alice, where Alice is like, I tried to kiss Sean. This thing happened. It's really difficult. And Gabby's like, listen, like, you're 17 years old. He's an adult. Like, yeah, I get it. He's a cute guy and you're interested or whatever. And she's like, oh, I'm almost 18. Okay. Almost isn't 18 though.
Mhm.
Like, Sean did the right thing. Like, if you're interested in him still when you're 18, approach it then, kind of thing. Gabby tells a story that is
Yeah.
so dark
Yeah.
and in a lot of ways really cruel. When she was 19, She slept with one of her father's closest friends who was 50. That's fine. If it's like she wants to be with somebody, she's an adult, he's an adult, that's fine. But she did it very purposefully because she was mad at her dad to hurt him in the biggest way she possibly could. Is she like chose a friend that was so close to him that would ruin that friendship forever. It was so dark that when I heard that story, I was just like, wow. I get that she was 19 at the time, but she's
Yeah.
telling this story to another teenager to kind of be like later on, like, oh, if you're just mad at your dad, you can hurt him like this. It was it was really shocking for me actually to hear that. And I think that the show is taking things a little bit too dark with characters that were supposed to be really liking,
Hmm.
but also getting a little frustrated with at times. And then they do this thing that's like way over there.
And the craziest thing is that they don't actually need to take it to that level at all in either one of these situations, because they could just have it with Jimmy. Let's start on the Jimmy subject here.
Mhm.
He could have just been drinking too much.
Yep.
And I don't want to go down the ridiculous road of, Hollywood's out of touch with the rest of America, but it did feel a lot to me that because, the people who write this show and work on this show are obviously, they're in sort of this West Coast world and specific. They probably feel this pressure to, okay, we need to include heavier drugs in all of this because, this is something that pushes it to another level and it makes it more extreme and it makes the struggle more real. But drinking alone makes the struggle real. Like, I think
100%. You're right.
they overthought this because I think they felt like they needed to one up a lot of other shows that are out there to make this like stand out more in the Hollywood landscape or for whatever reason. And it didn't need to be there because then you go down this rabbit hole of, okay, how did Jimmy get this? Is how it was, how bad was the addiction? And you go into all these other rabbit holes that you don't need to go down. And, for Gabby, it's fine if Gabby does things that are less than likable because everybody on this show
Sure.
does things that are less than likable.
Absolutely. She's human.
Yeah, but the intentionality of it and like some of the specifics were just a little bit too much. And even if they just changed the verbiage on a couple of things or just twisted the end of the conversation or just did a couple of things different in this scene, it would have made it a little bit more manageable. I just think at the end of the day, they didn't need to go to that level for the point to come across to Alice because that's really what
Yeah.
the scene is about.
And they definitely needed to drop the line of Gabby, even as a joke, giving that type of
Yeah.
advice to Alice to hurt Jimmy that way because Jimmy already lost his wife. He's
Yeah.
been drinking, women, drugs. He's finally trying to find a way to reconnect with Alice. And then Gabby's advice to Alice is hurt your dad, sleep with one of his friends. That'll really, if you're really mad at him, you can do that to him as well. Even as a joke, you're saying it to a minor. So she may not be, you don't know how she's taking it. Is she taking it as a joke? Maybe it's a joke now, but maybe it's not a joke later when she decides to really hurt her dad. It was just out of character. It felt out of character.
Yeah, and there's a couple of moments throughout this season where things do get a little bit strange, and that's where I think moving into season 2, there's still some work that they can do to make shrinking better. I think it's got so much potential. It's got so many really great actors at the center of it doing really interesting stuff. So
Yeah, talking about things that nobody talks about. This show is really special.
yeah, so I think if they can just sort of solidify a couple of the characters, a couple of their intentions a little bit better, like it can really accelerate things further. Like Paul to me is one of the best characters just because I feel like he has been very fully formed. He does have
Mhm.
unlikable moments, like we did see even some of that within this episode where we were reminded further he was never really there for his daughter. He was
Mhm.
always focused on his patients, but the way they sort of sold that and played all of that out. Like, even when she's just like, okay, you can come and live with us. We're going to make this sacrifice for you. You're struggling. And then him refusing it, I think in his head, he's just a lot like, I'm really doing good work out here. I don't want to upend my whole life. And she's just sitting there being like, you know what? You have not been there for me at all. I'm going through all of this to try to be there for you, and you don't even want it. It is, I can't even imagine how frustrating that might be.
Yeah, the line that really stuck with me that I'm sure stuck with him too was she's not just, changing her whole life for him to be there. She's doing it so that she can actually spend good time with him. And when
Yeah.
she was just like, "Oh, cool. Okay, so you're going to move in when you can't really talk to me anymore. You can't really spend any time with me anymore. I'm feeding you and just taking care of you. Cool, thanks. So you weren't here for my whole life. And
Yeah.
then at the end of your life, you're just going to give me, the hardest part where I don't get to actually get to know you, spend time with you, or anything like that. Awesome. Thank you so much for using me in that way, where she was more like, I don't want to just take care of you. I want to get to know you. I want to spend this last time with you. Like, let's, I'm opening myself up to you where we can actually build a relationship that we didn't get to build before. I'm so excited to get to spend like real time with you before it's, getting to a stage where it's not really quality time anymore. And it's more that I'm taking care of you, which I'm happy to do for you. But in exchange, I would also like to just get to know you and be with you. And Mason gets to be with you and get to know his granddad. I was just like, that's all really important stuff. But on the Paul side of
Yeah.
it, yeah, he's just kind of like, I think he sees it as his life is ending, that this part of his journey is done and now he's just here. It's asking him to retire.
Yeah, and he's clearly not ready to do that. Like, yeah,
No.
he's at retirement age and he could decide to walk away, but I think he wants to do it on his own terms, and that's very understandable. And this is where I applaud Shrinking and the producer for shelling out the money because this role of Meg, they could have went and gotten somebody who's sort of lesser known to save money or whatever, but they got Lily Rabe, who she's been great on American Horror Story and some other stuff, but she's an accomplished enough person that she could lead her own show. But to bring her in for this role, I think they were really cognizant of, okay, we have to have someone who's going to be okay going toe to toe with Harrison Ford and not being intimidated by that. I couldn't act opposite Harrison Ford. I don't even think I could be in the same room as Harrison Ford. I would just go into the fetal position.
She's perfect for this role. And that scene really was the highlight of this episode. It was so well acted,
Yeah.
beautifully written, so intense, so much pain on both
Yeah.
sides. Like, it's just, this show is quite good. I know, I have some beefs with it. It's not perfect or
Yeah.
anything, but it really does have the potential to be one of the best shows on TV.
My second, because I'm with you, that's probably the best part of the episode. My second favorite part of the episode, and it may sound odd because it's not like the most revelatory part.
The barbecue?
I mean, the barbecue is great,
It
but
was great.
I really like Sean and Liz and like that pairing and those two like talking because it's just they are so fundamentally different people in almost every imaginable way, but the rapport, the way they can kind of bounce off each other and they have this sort of acute understanding. Like I just had a really good time walking around with the two of them, and
Stomping on the neighbor's flowers.
yeah, it's like I know Krista Miller as an actress. I've seen her in Scrubs and some other stuff, but I haven't seen the actor who plays Sean that much before this show. But like he's done such a good job, and so sort of like getting us into his world and making all of this sort of stuff believable. Because the idea of like, oh, here's this guy who's troubled and gone through a lot, staying with his therapist. It is such a sitcom-y premise that it could venture into just complete unbelievability, but for whatever reason, it doesn't. And I really like it, and I don't roll my eyes at it.
Yeah, they have a really nice developing friendship there where they both just kind of feel like outsiders in this little world that's been put together with, Jimmy and Alice and everybody else. They just feel like they can't find their footing of what is out there for them. I mean, Liz is going through this with her husband. Her husband's retiring and, the house has been kind of her space. And now he's like, sorry, well, yeah, it's been your space. Now it's my turn. The house is going to be my space. So if you need space, find some stuff to do outside the house. I've done that for all this time. Now it's my turn, which is fair, right?
Yeah.
So she really does just feel displaced. And so does Sean.
I hope we see more of that. I mean, there's so much to get into in these final few episodes. Like we're really building towards that. I'm so excited to talk about it. Now, if you guys want to hear us talk about shrinking, join our Patreon. We
Mhm.
have live streams there every Tuesday. Thank you to everyone who is supporting us. We really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And we will see you here next time.